came aft, and the whole squadron flashed out stunsails, broad wings set in a thoroughly seamanlike manner, a glorious sight. Yet now the current was against them, and in spite of their fine spread of canvas they made but little headway. They were all of them sailing large, of course, all of them getting the last ounce of thrust from the dying breeze, with all the skill learnt in more than 20 years of war. A noble spectacle, but one that after a while called for no particular comment, and presently the old Lieutenant John Arrowsmith, 2 months senior to his friend Thomas Edwards, said, "When I was young, I always used to turn to the births and marriages in the Times as soon as I'd done with the promotions and dispatches. But now I turn to the deaths." "So do I," said Edwards. "And with this last batch that came with the packet, I found several names I knew. The first was Admiral Stranraer, Admiral Lord Stranraer, Captain Coop, that was." "Oh, indeed." "I sailed with him in the old Defender, a West Indies commission, where he taught us the spit and polish of those parts, gloves at all times, whatever the weather, Hessian boots with tassels on the quarter-deck, up lower yards and cross to gallant yards in under 5 minutes, or watch out for squalls. No reply allowed to any rebuke. If it were not that he's dead, I could tell you many a tale about him in Kingston. Indeed, he was not a well-liked man at all, at all. They say his surgeon and another medico killed him with a black draught, or something of that kind. But slowly, you understand me now, like the husband of one of those arsenic wives, eager to be a widow but not choosing to swing for it. From my acquaintance with his lordship, what you say does not surprise me in the least. On reflection, I believe I should offer each or either of the physical gentlemen a glass of brandy, were the occasions to offer. Do you see Surprise start her stunsail sheets not to outrun her station? Aye, she was always a wonderfully swift sailor, and now they've done her proud, as trim as a royal yacht. Webster saw her in young Sepping's yard, where they were fitting her out regardless, diagonal bracing and everything you can think of, fitting her out for a hydrographical voyage. A lovely little craft. For some time they discussed the ship's perfections, their practised hands holding her steady in their telescopes. But then, the line being perfectly re-established, a cable's length apart, Arrowsmith clapped his glass to and said, "Another death was of quite a different kind of man. Governor Wood of Sierra Leone. He was a fine fellow, very popular in the service, and he kept a noble table. Invited whole wardrooms when the king's ships came in, and youngsters too. I remember him very well. John Kneller and I, and nearly all our messmates, dined with him after some cruel weather off the River Plate, and weeks of damn short commons. A sprung butter drowned the bread-room. Lord, how we ate and laughed and sang. So he's dead. Well, God rest him, say I. Though when everything's said and done we must all come to it, which may be some comfort to those that go before. A very handsome wife, as I recall, but on the learned side, which made her neighbours shy. The breeze is strengthening out there. Dover has let fly her fore-to-gallant sheets." The gust, the series of gusts, disturbed the picture-book regularity for a while, but it was restored after a remarkably short interval. All hands knew that they were being watched, not only by an uncommonly exigent Commodore and the even more formidable Commander-in-Chief Lord Keith, but also by an increasingly numerous band of highly informed, highly critical observers on shore, and presently the two lieutenants' conversation resumed. And then there was another what you might call naval death. A good deal earlier than the others, but only now reported. Did you ever meet Dr. Maturin? I don't know that I did, but I have often heard of him. A very clever doctor, they say, called in to treat Prince William. Always sails with Jack Aubrey. That's a man. Well, he has a wife, They live with the Aubreys at his big place in Dorset, but of course you know it, being a Dorset man. Yes, Woolcombe or Woolhampton, as some say. It's rather far for us, and we don't visit, but I have been to one or two of the Blackstones meets there, and we used to see Mrs. Aubrey and Mrs. Maturin at the Dorchester Assembly. Mrs. Maturin breeds Arabs, a very good horsewoman, and an uncommon fine whip. Well, yes, so they said. But do you know a place called Maiden Oscott? Only too well, with its damned awkward bridge. The report gives no details, but it seems she pitched over. The whole shooting match, coach, horses and all, pitched over right down into the river, and only the groom was brought out alive. "Oh, my God!" cried Edwards. And after a pause, "My wife disliked her, but she was a very beautiful woman. Some people said she was a demi-rep. She had some astonishing jewels. There was some talk of Colonel Cholmondeley, and it is said the marriage was not a happy one. But she's dead, God rest her. I say no more. Yet I doubt I ever see her like again." They both reflected, gazing out over the brilliant sea with half-closed eyes as the squadron drew inshore and the watching crowd increased. And Edward said, "When you come to think of it, on looking about our shipmates and relations, can you think of any marriage that could be called a happy one after the first flush? There's something to be said for a bachelor's existence, you know. Turn in whenever you like, read in bed. Offhand, I cannot think of many. Poor Wood in Sierra Leone, for example. They entertained without a pause, so as not to have to sit down at table alone. It's said that Wood... But he's dead. No, I cannot think of many without some discord or contention. But, unless it's very obvious, who can tell just where the balance lies? After all, as a philosopher said, though matrimony has its pains, celibacy can have no pleasure. I know nothing about philosophy, but I have met some philosophers. We often used to go to Cambridge to see my brother, the Don, and a miserable set of... He checked the word at the sight of his friend's daughters. The elder, charming, though rather shabby, pushing through the crowd towards them, and went on in a disapproving tone, "Though you always were a bookish fellow, even in Britannia's cockpit." "Oh, Papa!" cried the elder girl. "Which is the surprise?" "The second in the line, my dear." The leading ships were now close enough for people to be seen. Blue coats and red on the quarterdeck, white-trousered seamen taking in topsails and courses, together with jib and staysails, but scarcely to be distinguished. The young lady gently took her father's telescope and trained it on the Surprise. "Is that the famous Captain Aubrey?" she asked. "Why, he's short, fat, and red-faced. I am disappointed." "No, booby," said her father. "The Commodore is where a Commodore ought to be, aboard the pennant ship, of course. Pomone. Come, child, don't you see the broad pennant, eh?" "Oh, yes, sir, I see it," she replied, trailing her glass on Pomone's quarterdeck. "Pray, who is the very tall, fair-haired man, wearing a rear admiral's uniform and holding his hat under his arm?" "Why, Lizzie, that's your famous Jack Aubrey. Commodores dress like rear admirals, you know, and they receive a flag officer's return to their salute, as you'll hear in about 10 seconds. Oh, isn't he beautiful? Molly Butler had a coloured engraving of him in action with the Turks, of his boarding the Torgood sword in hand, and all the great girls at school." What all the great girls said or thought was lost in the Pomone's exactly spaced 17-gun salute to the Commander-in-Chief, and the echo of the last report, and the drift of powder smoke had not disappeared before the towering flagship began her 15-gun reply. When that, too, was done, Mr. Arrowsmith said, "Now, in another 10 seconds...